guys are?
Um, it's not too bad. It's just a little chilly, but it could be worse.
Hey, they're popping in.
Yep. Little chilly, but it could be worse. Hi guys.
They're popping in.
Yep. Little chilly, but it could be worse. Hi guys.
They're popping in. Okay, so there's a delay. So there is a slight delay on the YouTube thing. So just be aware of that. Mute your thing, and we'll be good to go.
Yeah. Mute the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I did that. Good to go. Yeah, look at all these people popping in. I just want everyone to know that you're listening. You're watching live. Please lower your expectations. We'd like to do that. As I told my wife, when we got married, I want to make sure that she has muted expectations. Same thing here. We have got a lot of fantastic topics scheduled, so it's going to be a good time. But we're just going to give everyone a couple minutes to pop in. So stay tuned.
Well, hi, we got people from all over, and I'm so excited to be here today with you guys. We had a huge list of signups, so I feel like it's going to take a while for everyone to get on. So we'll give you guys a couple minutes, and then we'll jump right in. We had so many awesome questions that I am absolutely excited about to answer. You guys were absolutely awesome submitting questions. But also feel free, if there's something you think of and you need to know, pop it. There's a really great chat here in YouTube. So you can actually pop up some questions. We're going to do our best to keep watch on those as well and squeeze some of those questions in. But looks like we're getting a lot of people. Hi. Well, there is a lot of people. I'm absolutely so excited, especially because I know today is a holiday. Kids are home from school.
Yeah. Today is National Drink Wine Day. Also National Buy a Mattress Day, because that's usually what happens on President's Day. So if you guys are looking to buy a mattress, today is the day. You guys are going to get some great deals, but good times. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and wasting an hour with us. Hopefully we can make it worth your time.
I appreciate that reminder because I do need a new mattress. So thank you.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I want to take a moment to say hi. My name is Shelly Fagin, but I have two awesome co-hosts today, and I want to give them a chance to tell them a little bit about themselves, to tell you. And so we have Casey Markee and Arsen Rabinovich. So guys, Casey, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Thanks, Shelly. So I've been an SEO since about 1999, a long time ago when GoTo was around and we used to buy keywords. GoTo.com became Overture.com, good times. I've been working with bloggers for many, many years. My specialty is site auditing. So what I try to do is take a site, tear it to shreds, try not to make the blogger cry too much. And then we tell them what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and what we can get them to significantly increase their bottom line traffic and, of course, their ad income. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a diehard Jayhawks fan, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, and I'm excited to be on this conference today. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Arsen, how about you?
Oh, hey. I am an SEO. I also run an agency out of Los Angeles. We are top hat rank. We specialize in technical SEO, but we are a full service digital marketing agency. We do search and social. And I've been doing this for about 10 years now, 9 years as an agency.
Nice. Well, thank you. I don't know if you guys know very much about me. I am an SEO as well. I've been doing this since I was actually pregnant with my oldest child, who's 17 now. Oh, yeah, turning 17 this year. Oh my gosh. So it feels like forever, but I started as a developer. I love to code, build sites, then went into SEO. You know, if you build it, how do we get that traffic? How does it come? And it really, really taught me to be a better developer. But I work with a lot of local businesses. That's a vast part of my client background. But then I've had the most amazing experience over this last year working with Casey, with some of his food bloggers. And so he goes and he audits those sites, and then they need things fixed. And so he's been sending some of them to me and to Arsen. And so we've been helping make the sites great. It's so exciting. And so it's been great for me because I love the niche. I love interacting with a lot of these bloggers are moms, not all of them, but it's kind of how I started. When I first got my start in the industry, I remember going to a couple of local conferences, Mom 2.0 summits. It's just an amazing experience. It's so fun, the energy. And so I enjoy it. So I'm glad to get a chance to work with these two guys. But we're also like WordPress ninjas. So aside from food bloggers, we deal with a lot of small business sites, and small all the way up to large, honestly, but big focus on WordPress. So I'm excited. And I'm in Texas, so. But awesome. Thank you, guys. It looks like we're getting quite a crowd here, so we're super excited. So we had decided, because we had a whole bunch of questions come in, that we wanted to try to address as many of those as possible. There were so many good ones. So we're going to jump in with some of the questions, because honestly, some of the topics we wanted to cover were asked in these questions. So we felt like that was the best way to go about it. So let's see. So honestly, there's so many good ones, it's hard to choose which to start with. But let's start with, can you please explain the difference in stats and page views between Google Analytics and Jetpack site stats? My Google Analytics are about 50% less than Jetpack, and they're confused as to why. So love to hear a little bit about that and which one's better, essentially. Should you be using Jetpack? Casey, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Shelly, thanks so much. So Jetpack doesn't ignore, there's 3 reasons why you're going to find that Jetpack stats are not nearly as reliable as Google Analytics. The first one is that Jetpack doesn't ignore as much bot traffic as Google Analytics. It's funny because it's a very well-maintained plugin, and it's maintained by Automatic, which is well known in the WordPress community, but they just don't do as good a job filtering out bot traffic as Google Analytics. The second issue might be the fact that Google Analytics uses sessions as the default metric. So sessions can contain multiple page views. Jetpack uses page views as a user metric. And in many people, unless you know how to go in and look at the correct stat, you might be looking at page views and trying to line them up with sessions, and they're never going to match. You're going to have significantly more page views than sessions. And finally, kind of a pro user tip for Jetpack. If you're using Jetpack, you need to make sure that you go in and that your time zone settings are the same as Google Analytics, because if they're different, you're going to find overlapping traffic, and that's going to throw off your Jetpack traffic considerably. Hopefully that helps you out.
I agree. And honestly, if you go and look at Jetpack's website, they're using Google Analytics. So,
but at the same time,
yeah,
at the same time, you want to make sure that your analytics is firing properly as well, right? So I would take a look and make sure everything's installed properly, and do some recordings and make sure that that's coming through without any issues for you.
Oh my God, Topher's on the call. And he wants to talk about how AMP is the single greatest thing to ever happen to the web in SEO. And I'm also going to go ahead and say that I'm going to become a vegetarian. That's how much I think of AMP. So no, we're going to ignore, and Topher has been blocked. I'm not going to do any AMP questions.
Well, speaking of AMP, actually, we had a question here that was talking about, I coded a custom WordPress theme just to use for my company's website, and I want to integrate AMP into it. Would it be more ideal for me to use an AMP plugin for my WordPress website, or hard code AMP code into the custom theme files that I developed? So good question. We might save you here with our answer. What do you think?
I mean, if you're going to code, AMP, good luck. The plugin is good. It's not perfect out of the box.
Yeah. I think also maintained by Automatic. So again, it's a very good plugin.
So I think there's two. One is by Automatic, and plug it in. As long as your AMP code is validating and it's not throwing issues, you should be good. I don't see too many of our clients having issues with that plugin.
No, and again, we try to tell people we don't want to try to code too much into your theme when at all possible, and that's just because things change. At least with a plugin that we know is actively maintained and has a strong community behind it, we know it's going to be updated relatively quickly. Certainly quicker than you possibly editing your entire theme to make it work. So I'm of the belief that you use a framework, and we use plugins to add functionality whenever possible.
Agreed. Okay, so this question here was about the Genesis framework. They want to know, how does that play into SEO? And is it one of the best themes for SEO? And how does that, essentially everyone said Genesis is the best. Why?
That's a good question. I'll just jump in here very quickly on that. So Genesis is a very well thought out framework, and Genesis is again a framework. The good thing about Genesis is that you can buy the framework and a child theme, and basically you're given a developer license. You can install it on 300 sites if you want. That's really pretty cool. You can leverage it considerably. The good thing about Genesis is that it has a lot of built-in bells and whistles that give you a competitive SEO edge. One of them is schema, for example. Many bloggers always ask me, Casey, how can I generate the site links, or not the site links menu, but the search box in Google? Like sometimes you'll type in a site and it'll have a nice search box there in Google for the whole site. That's website schema. Website schema is built into Genesis frameworks, as an example. It's amazing how many sites don't do that. They also have other breadcrumbs built in, or I'm sorry, other schemas built in, from web page down to creative work, and then site navigation element. Site navigation element is great for kind of helping you qualify for site links. So really, really very important with regards to using a theme that has these built-in features. And then there are some other things too. There's tons of customizable widgets. The code is pretty nice. It's not bloated. There is a fantastic way to customize the site. And one of the really cool things is that you can optimize your category pages. That's an extremely underutilized benefit of WordPress, is that your category pages are basically your windows into the house of your blog. We can go in there and customize the crap out of those category pages. Nice on-page H1, custom page title and description, above the fold content that we put internal links to. That alone is a fantastic advantage of Genesis. Now, some other themes have tried to do that, but they always seem to fall short whenever I do an audit.
I could not agree more. And honestly, the framework has one of the biggest, I'd say, like, support that there would be of any of these companies. The company's been around for a long time. They're established, and now they're with WordPress engine. And so they really are a big part of the WordPress community. I know that is super important, because we want to make sure that whatever theme you're using, that the developers are staying on top of changes, and that you don't have to worry about things. So one of the things I'm seeing as I'm working with some of the food bloggers that have been referred to me, some of them have these massively customized websites, which is amazing in its own, thing, that they were able to invest. They found developers that could realize their dreams, essentially. But that customization is actually hurting them. I'm finding a lot of duplication with a lot of these custom post types and the way things are patched together, that really, really could come back to harm you. And as there's major changes that occur in WordPress, we're talking about like Gutenberg, this big change that's coming, that's here, but is not going away. Essentially, we want to make sure that we're building on a framework that is forward thinking and that can evolve. You don't want to have to start from scratch every single time with a brand new custom website when there's these major changes. So you really need something that is adaptable and that you can feel confident that the dev team behind it is there to support it and continue to approve it, and they're on top of stuff. So for me, that's super important, coming on from the technical side of building out some of these sites.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the themes right now that are coming out, I'm seeing a lot of bloggers start using them, are these all-in-one themes.
Right.
And they're filled with useless JavaScript. It's like, oh, you might use this as an e-commerce shop, so let's drop a bunch of JavaScript that for a food blogger or a recipe blogger, you probably would never use any of that. So you really have to be careful when you're choosing a theme to make sure that it fits your purposes and nothing else. So Genesis is really good at that.
I couldn't agree more. I deal with, if you ask me, I have a hate relationship with certain like page builders, like Divi.
Beaver Builder.
I like Beaver Builder because it's not short code driven. So for certain sites,
Okay.
I think that one's great. Divi I've always had an issue with, because if you were to turn Divi off and actually look at the code that's outputted, it's riddled. I mean, it takes thousands of short codes to generate those layouts that they create on each page. And each one of those is a separate call to the database. So it's like, it's insane. But they're also, because like Arsen said, they're all in one. They put all this features and functionalities in there to make sure that you have it should you need it, but not everybody needs that. And so I'm finding that they put every single type of JavaScript loading on every single page across the site, just in case you want a slider, and just in case you want this. And you might not even have it.
And it's firing. It's firing even though you're not using it. So it's bloating your site. It's bloating your theme. It's completely useless.
Now that actually brings up a good point, because there are some things you can do to minimize that kind of unnecessary stuff or fluff that's loaded in the background. I actually have a plugin here. Let me see if I can actually find it and paste it over here. It's called WP Asset Cleanup. This is a fantastic plugin. It might be news to Arsen and Shelly as well, but basically how this works is it'll scan each of the pages on your site and let you know what needs to be loaded on that page and what does not. So for example, many of you are using a contact form. Many of you might not be aware that a contact form will basically load on every page, even if the contact form's not there, because of the JavaScript and CSS behind that contact form. So if you install, again, the good thing about WordPress is that you have the ability to find plugins that will, again, minimize the impact per page. If we don't need certain resources on the page, a plugin like I've just pasted over will do that for you. It'll tell you, here's what is loading, here's what's not loading, and it'll just eliminate that. It's going to immediately help your page speed as well.
I can't even say how awesome that is, because I've had to do a lot of customization to make sure that JavaScript that needs to load loads only on the pages that they should and not on anything else. So to have a plugin that will not only make you aware, but will allow you to control that is incredible. I can't wait to try that out, Casey. That makes me super excited.
Oops, let's see. Our YouTube limit is causing me a little bit of issues here. So let me bear with me here. So I am going to paste over another resource here. Hopefully, no, gosh darn it. Apparently, I'm too wordy. 200 characters is not enough. So I'm going to paste over here a plugin. It's called Quick Link, and it's a WordPress plugin. And basically, what the plugin does is it attempts to make navigation to subsequent pages faster. Think of it as preloading. So what happens is embedded within the plugin is a JavaScript library, and it detects the links in the viewport as you scroll down. It waits till the browser is idle, and then it'll prefetch the URLs for you. So that's another opportunity for you. And again, the good thing about these plugins, folks, is that they're actively maintained. These plugins have been updated very recently. There's strong support teams behind them, and more than that, they're very WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get. I am not a coder. Arsen and Shelly, much smarter than me. Just again, ask anyone. And if I'm able to use these plugins, you should be able to use these plugins. So this is something that you might want to consider. And again, any little thing you can do to dial in the page speed is going to help you considerably.
I could not agree more. That is super crucial.
You heard her. You heard her, right? She definitely agrees that she's smarter than me. That's exactly what she said.
No, that's not what I said. Absolutely not true. I will tell you, I learn something new every day from this guy. So blessed to get a chance to work with him. He makes me smarter. So we've had so many good questions, and I see a ton that have popped up in the chat here. So let's see. I feel like we should pull some from the group. What do you see? Do you guys see one you prefer?
Well, Andrew jumped in here. Andrew Wilder here, by the way, for those of you who don't know him, Andrew Wilder is with nerdpress.net. Fantastic blog support program. I'll actually paste over a link in the forum here and you can check him out. But he actually responded to a question about plugins, and we get that a lot. And with regards to plugins, it's all about quality, not quantity. I mean, now I will tell you, the record, and I would love to hear Arsen and Shelly's take on this. The record was 117. That's the amount of plugins that I saw on one site. I haven't seen anything higher than that, but 117 plugins is a substantial amount. But people worry about, I can't use this because it's going to cause a load, or I can't use this because I have too many plugins, and they might only have 20 plugins. Folks, you're just not going to have an issue in most cases. It's when you get up into 50, 60, 100 plugins, there's an issue. Okay, there's some problems.
And you're not maintaining them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Arsen knows better than me, so just be aware of that as well.
Yeah, so we see a lot. We see a lot of as soon as we go into the back end and we see these plugins, and some of them haven't been updated, and like they're 4 or 5 versions behind. Not only that, it's slowing down the site. It's a potential security issue for you, right? So definitely, if you're not using a plugin, get rid of it. There's really no need with some of these themes right now. There's really no need for most of these plugins, and I would just ongoing make sure that they're updated and checked, and they're not just hanging out, just doing their own thing.
I could not agree more. I'm actually finding I log in, and some of these sites have multiple versions of the same objective for a plugin, not only installed. Some of them aren't active. If they're not active, don't have them there. Go through and audit your plugins. Are you using ones that you really don't need to use? Like you said, delete them. Even if they're not being used on a page, like for instance, I see people, there's a Genesis slider plugin. Even though you're using Genesis, I see it installed.
Right.
It's not being used on the site.
Yeah.
Guess
That's
what?
a good one.
That JavaScript is being put loading on every page of your website, even though you don't have the slider going. So big problem there.
Yeah. And again, look at the resources we've already pasted over. You can use one of those resources. It'll detect when there's these elements on the page that you don't need, and you could singularly, deactivate them, or you could singularly minify them so that they don't load on that page. That's going to help you considerably on a bottom line page speed basis.
Absolutely. So I saw a question here that I think would be great. So obviously our wonderful host, SEMrush, or SEMrush as some people like to refer to it. I'm in the SEMrush camp.
SEMrush.
This chat is over. I'm sorry, this chat is over.
Shut it down.
It is SEMrush. Shut it down, Shelly. I cannot believe this. SEMrush. That's what you wouldn't say SEO. Would we say SEO? SEO?
No.
SEO?
You know
No,
what?
exactly. So I'm sorry.
We are our own entity.
Oh, Shelly. Wow.
You know what? There's no one way. I will tell you, it's the most fun debate ever, and even corporate office will not tell you one way or the other. But anyways, moving on, in that I've been so blessed to get a chance to work with this company, and I've had so much fun. I mean, I've used this tool myself since pretty much the 3rd month, I think, that they launched. So I believe it was like December of 2009. I've always loved it. It started out for competitive analysis. It's incredible and so powerful, but it's evolved. There's so many great tools. And somebody actually had asked, what do you think is the most successful tool or function that SEMrush has to offer? Can you give an example? I'll tell you, it's really hard to choose. I honestly, I've always loved the original tool set, in that I can put in a website, I can see what's driving traffic to it. For me, creating a content strategy plan for clients and deciding, what should we go after, keywords, it's so valuable. So that's always been my favorite. But I will tell you, there's so many new ones. If you're looking at exploring new content and as the bloggers, you guys are always publishing posts and needing new material. And I feel like I would certainly run out of ideas. And so it might be a struggle from time to time. You get a little writer's block. Our tools, we have our keyword magic tool, which is amazing. There's just so many different components in our tool sets that will allow you to come up with ideas and as far as creating new content. But we also have our really great tools for writing content as well that embed into Google Docs. And so as you are writing your articles, there's all this really great feedback about, is it readable? Are your keywords in there? Should you be inject? So it's like this little awesome little tool. So I feel like you guys should try that out because it's actually free, I think, to everybody, even if you do not have an account. But I'm excited about the tools. And I would love to hear from Arsen and Casey, your favorite tools that you use on a daily basis. So let's hear it.
So I love the domain overview part of SEMrush. The original, can we say the original tool set?
Yeah.
Right? Amazing. My second most favorite part of SEMrush is the API, and we do a lot of interesting stuff. And you don't really need to code. You can use Google Sheets, and you can pull in a lot of information, and you can visualize it in so many different ways. There's so much to pull, especially from a forensic standpoint. If you're trying to figure out like what happened, why did I lose rankings, which keywords exited, which positions over time, which keywords that have a specific SERP feature like a local pack or a featured snippet or a YouTube video. All of that is a layer on top of what you can get out of Google Search Console. And then obviously my third most favorite tool is the auditor. And I recommend this all the time. And the auditor can crawl, I think right now we're up to 100,000 pages, right, Shelly? Is it 100,000 with SEMrush? But yeah, for any blogger, I recommend using the auditor. Have SEMrush set up ongoing crawls to make sure you're monitoring everything that's happening with your site, surface level or subcutaneous, and an ongoing level. You're blogging, you're adding more content, internal links, and there's so much room for error. Having these ongoing once a week or once every 2 week crawls of your website is so important.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That's one of my favorite tools as well. We have some amazing tools for monitoring your site. Setting up the site audit is super simple and fun. I love it. I love being able to discover new things that I would not see to the naked eye. So it's just so helpful, especially if you don't have that technical background. Absolutely try it out. Casey, what do you think?
You know what? I love featured snippets. And the good thing about SEMrush is they have a featured snippet report under position tracking. That's really cool. So look at what's currently being tracked. You can look at what's being lost. You can look at opportunities. It's fantastic. So I tend to recommend that. I speak on featured snippets quite a bit, and I always reference that as one of the tools. I'm going to go ahead and paste over a recent featured snippet deck from PubCon. You guys might have value on that, and it talks a little bit more about that tool specifically.
I could not agree more. Actually, my upcoming PubCon talk is going to be on featured snippets as well, specifically how to find them. Mine's geared a little bit towards local, but we'll probably honestly have some crossover.
Nice.
I couldn't agree more. Getting that position 0 is golden, especially if you are a blogger. That's a big part of my strategy. Absolutely. And I will tell you, we have actually Melissa Fosh on here, and she runs a SEMrush blog. There's so many great articles. I know it might be a little overwhelming when you're like, how do I utilize this tool? It isn't free. So obviously you got to figure out, can I justify this expense? So utilize the blog. There's so much great information. I actually have some articles that I'm working on writing as we speak that I hope to roll out next month that I'm going to do specifically for bloggers. but they're not quite ready, but I'm looking forward to that. But if you follow me on like Twitter, I'll definitely be tweeting those out when they are up. But as far as processes, how to use each one of the tools and apply it to what you do. But seriously, the SEMrush blog has a lot of really awesome content as well. There's a category specifically that is for how-to info for each of the blogs. So go look that up. Absolutely recommend it. So moving on, we had so many great questions actually. Let's see. If the alt tags on images affect SEO, what exactly should go in the alt text fields? Is it just a description of the image, keywords, info for the post? How many words or characters should it be?
This is a very good question. I'm going to go ahead and jump in on this. I'm going to go ahead and paste over some resources specifically on this to help you out here. Alt tags are extremely underutilized and usually done incorrectly by the majority of people online, especially within the food, do-it-yourself, and lifestyle niche. Oh, what did I do? Did I paste the wrong one here? Let me just make sure we've got that here. I'm going to paste over a couple resources here that'll help you guys. And Google, and this information is out there. It's just amazing how we can tell a blogger, here's what Google would like you to do. And then they'll go to a Facebook group and do exactly the complete opposite, even though you've got a guide right there in front of you, or you've got a professional telling you, here's what we want to do. So the thing is that alt tags are for visibility. Alt tags are for accessibility. Alt tags are for visual readers. They're not really, the SEO is important, but it's a secondary consideration. We're writing, the goal with alt tags is to visually describe what is in the photo to someone who cannot see it. And I want you to take a look at the resources we've pasted over because they provide detailed examples from Google about what you should be doing. Now, your question about how many words should be in an alt tag, exceptional question. And I've gone ahead and pasted over a study done by Sean Anderson of Hobo Web in the UK. And he's done this test since 2011. And he's basically set up a dummy domain with a non-search term so that he could test how effective or ineffective alt tags are. And since he's been doing that, he's been able to find that the first 16 words, Google basically counts up to about 16 words in the alt text. And he's been, again, running this testing yearly since 2011. I think 16 words is quite a bit for alt text. So I don't agree with that. But if you have to go that long, it's clear that Google is picking it all up. So if I'm looking at a recipe and it is banana cream pie because I love banana cream pie, and it's a picture of a piece of banana cream pie on a white plate with bananas in the background, that's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say banana cream pie -foodblog.com / banana cream pie or something along those lines. Because I get that all the time, is that alt tags are for users only. Pinterest, if you want to optimize for Pinterest, you can use the title tag, or you can download a plugin like Social Warfare or Social Pug or Tasty Pens, which will generate a custom pin description field, which Pinterest will also pick up. But one of the things that we're looking for when we're doing site auditing is quality. And there's nothing high quality about a site that has spammed or incorrectly used alt tags on every image. So as we go in, we want to make sure that we're putting that information down in a way that's digestible and that it's correct. So definitely review those resources we've pasted over and get on that in 2019. That'll help you long term.
I could not agree more. Absolutely. So we had a really great question from Melissa in the chat. She asked if we could discuss the problem with writing too many thin blog posts and keyword cannibalization. Very great question, Melissa. I know we've recently been auditing a lot of our blog posts and going back, analyze your old ones specifically. They're not rich with a lot of information. They probably shouldn't be there. What do you think? Arsen, Casey?
Okay, so
go ahead,
Casey,
Arsen.
Go, because I know what you're going to say. Go. I'll follow up.
Oh, so I'm all about consolidation with regards to thin content. There is one of the things that I hear a lot is that, oh my God, I'm ranking for banana cream pie, so I need to publish more recipes about banana cream pie. That kind of topical relevancy or that kind of belief is just incorrect. Just because you're ranking well for something doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a better chance of ranking for other things that are very similar, or if it's going to hurt you to write other things that are not or as similar. Now, that being said, if I've got 5 banana cream pie recipes on my site, or if I've got 5 posts on a very similar topic, I am going to cannibalize the ability of each of those pieces of content to rank competitively individually. So we want to make sure that you're looking at that and asking yourself, well, maybe I can combine or merge or consolidate 2 or 3 of these resources into a longer form piece of content. I know many of you on the call have probably heard the term skyscraper content, and it's as old as vegan bacon, which I don't want to talk about anymore. I'm already sad. But if you were going to do this, you would go and you would, take these resources and look and say, gosh, I can't understand why these 2 resources, I've got one resource here solidly on page 1, and I've got these other 2 resources, which are just not competitive. Bottom of page 2, top of page 5, something along those lines. Well, I think what you might want to do is just consider maybe consolidating those other 2 resources into one better resource, or trying to really look at, eliminating thin or low quality content. Now, we do a lot of site auditing. And when we're talking about the site, we're talking about an entire overall view. Now, I tell everyone this all the time when I'm doing content auditing. I want you to think of your site as a garden. Your blog posts are all of your flowers. If you've got these low quality blog posts or these thin content pages or empty pages, maybe you have a tag page, author archives, paginated content, keyword fields, you're leaving all those open. Think of those as weeds. If we don't do anything to those weeds, they'll strangle our flowers. It'll make it harder for our individual content to rank competitively. So we want to prune those weeds. We want to prune that thin content. We can either look at consolidating and updating first, or we can look at no indexing and deleting second. But we want to really stay on top of that. If content hasn't been visited or sent any traffic in 90 to 120 days, that's a sure sign that Google does not highly value the content. Anyone who tells you that you shouldn't be deleting content from their site, turn around, walk the other way, especially if they're associated with an ad company, because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Arsen, Shelly, and I have literally audited thousands of sites. I can tell you that the sites that do the best are the ones that really take a hatchet or weed clippers, in our analogy, to their site and cut off the non-performing content, okay? We want to make it easier for Google to individually crawl, algorithmically score, and rank our better content. So it just makes sense that we'd want to make it easier for them to find that content, bottom line.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So to follow up to what Casey's saying, so a few things that I'm noticing, and I think we have a question about this. Tags competing with categories. So let's say you're writing about desserts, or you're writing about all kinds of different recipes, and you have a category for desserts and you have a tag for desserts. Those 2 will compete with each other. That's cannibalization. You want to pick one or the other and stick with it. Most likely a category, and then you can use tags as frequently as you want and as many times as you want, as long as they're being blocked from crawling. At the same time, there's something to be said about creating topical silos. So in Casey's example, if you're writing about a lot of different recipes that are pretty much on the same topic, for lack of a better word. So like, let's say you're writing about a whole bunch of different cream pie, banana cream pie recipes. Those will start competing with each other unless you show a specific relationship between those posts to Google, that all of these posts are organized under a category of banana cream pies. So that if somebody searches for just banana cream pie recipes, Google will have a resource page to show them, which would be a category or a archive or the top level page for that topical silo of banana cream pies. For somebody who's not refining their query to say a banana cream pie with blueberries or whatever have you, right? And you should nest all of your banana cream pie recipes inside of that banana cream pie category silo. Now, if you don't have your post organized with category in URL, don't do it now, because then you're going to create 301s and you're going to create a situation where you're going to start losing some rankings as Google's trying to figure out where things are organized. So you can do this with a secondary signal like breadcrumbs. You can show topical organization utilizing breadcrumbs, even though your post might live in the root or in a date archive. But definitely organizing similar content within the same topic into a categorical silo will help with preventing cannibalization.
Yeah, exactly. And just to kind of add one more thought on this really quickly, when it is okay to delete content, folks. 404s are not going to kill you. 404s are not a sign of low quality. 404s are how the internet works. I have people that are just vehemently opposed to 404s, and they'll try to redirect something to something that's not related. They'll redirect it to the home page. They just don't like 404s. That doesn't do you any good. Google treats that kind of redirect as a soft 404, meaning that they just wipe out the redirect. You don't get any authority, and it was a wasted action on your part. So try to minimize that by clearly, I have a lot of bloggers who like to unpublish content. When you unpublish content, you create a 404. And let's say that you've unpublished a post and then decide 6 months later you want to revitalize that post. You're going to find that it's hard for that post to rank at that same URL. Google does no longer trust that 404 because you've unpublished it for an extended period of time. So try not to unpublish content. If you're not sure about the quality of the content, no index it. That's fine. If you no index something, we're just telling Google, don't algorithmically score it against me. But I'm going to leave it open so that those who are navigating through my site can find it easily. So if you have, for example, I know a lot of bloggers have old recipe posts that they're just not proud of, or they have personal posts or posts of a personal nature. Maybe you've attended a conference, maybe it's an expired giveaway, something along those lines. Those are all great candidates to no index. Okay, at least then they're there on your site. If someone wants to search for them, maybe they'll find value. But algorithmically, they're not going to be held against you with regards to an overall quality diagnosis on the part of Google.
I definitely agree. Let's see. So we got some really great questions, and I'm having a hard time choosing between them. But staying a little bit on the topic, somebody asked, what if instead we want to change the URL of the post? What would you recommend?
So the question is, why do you want to change the URL of the post, right? Are you changing it because you're migrating? Are you changing it because you're redoing your site? Or are you changing it just to add a keyword to it, which I would completely recommend against doing. But that's just my opinion. Casey?
Yeah, I would rather you go outside and get a stick and stick it in your eye than for you to change your URLs. It's that big of a deal. When you change your URL, you're resetting all the end authority on that post. We just don't change URLs. The only time that I advise people to change URLs is when it's a site-wide issue. Like, for example, they have dates in their URLs. If you're on the call today and you still have dates in your URLs, that puts you at a disadvantage to update and republish content. And updating and republishing content to make it better and more future-proofed is one of the single greatest things you can do to generate new and existing traffic. Other than that, there's no reason to redirect. The only reason you'd redirect or change a URL is if you just published it and you made a mistake. You know what? It's going to be fine. Google hasn't crawled the URL probably that fast. It certainly hasn't accumulated any authority. You could do a quick redirect and be fine, but there's just no reason to change URLs. And here's the thing as well. We're optimizing for mobile users. Do you know what you can't see on a mobile device? A full URL. So don't think that there's any sort of a big user advantage for you to try to take a longer URL and make it shorter, okay? We would clearly like it to be shorter at the beginning. You know, if you can make a URL that's good for users right away, do that. But never go back and correct these kind of mistakes or think that, well, I'm going to update the post. I'm going to go ahead and update the post to add keywords, because Google specifically says, don't do this. Never change URLs.
Especially if it's ranking, because a lot of times I have on my consult calls with clients, they're like, oh, I have a blog post that's doing really well. I wanted to do better. I wanted to expand for more keywords. So I want to add more exact match keywords to my URL. That's a terrible idea. If it's already ranking, well, why would you want to do that? If it's bringing in traffic, optimize page level. Don't change the URL. Don't change the address.
I could not agree more. Definitely don't touch it unless you have to for some absolute reason. Like Casey said, if you still have those dates in there, don't just switch it. You definitely need to consult with an SEO when making a drastic
Absolutely.
change like this, because it definitely needs to be planned out. We need to make sure that redirects are set up properly, that there's a way to match the old URLs. Some people think, oh, now's the time to go and change those and update them because we're making the other changes. In some instances, maybe, but most likely the developer is going to do a redirect match to strip those out, the dates. And so they still want to match that exact same post name with the original URL. So just make sure that you are working with a consultant who really knows what they're doing if you do make that change, for sure. I am seeing a great question here that they're wondering if there's any SEO value to having a table of content on their post.
Casey?
What was the question?
Oh, is there any SEO value to adding a table of content to their post?
Yeah, okay. So that's a user-first optimization. It's kind of interesting because we also call those jump links. And Google will actually generate a jump link for you or multiple jump links in search if you do that, as a matter of fact. And they've been doing that for a while. And I'm of the belief that anytime you can make your content easy to navigate for users, you should. It's why if you're a food, do-it-yourself, or lifestyle blogger, you really should be using jump to recipe buttons or jump to content buttons because users want those. It's amazing. Whenever we do a survey, we always ask, hey, what do you want to see on the site? And like, yeah, I like the content, but I don't want to be forced to read through a ton of stuff that, at the time, I don't have the time to really digest. I want to just get down to the meat of things. Table of content works very similar to that. So Google also creates these jump to sections in search, and you can use a plugin or a table of content plugin to create what are called anchor links. So I'm going to go ahead and paste over a couple resources here. And you might find that of value because I know that someone submitted this question earlier, so I'm glad it's come up. And that should help you out there. But I know I'll turn it over to Shelly. I know that she also has some great feedback on the jump to recipe situation. I think you even have an article we can paste over. Is that right, Shelly?
I absolutely do. I know in the blogging industry, this is a kind of a topic that people are unsure which way to go. And for those of you who might not be aware, it's more because these sites are driven by advertising. That's how they make their money. And so, of course, there's that concern that putting in that jump link, the anchor text that'll jump down to a section, that skips over a bunch of ads and they're not going to get the revenue from it. I'm going to post a really great resource that kind of explains both sides of this argument. Of course, I'm an SEO. So for me, I think of things from that perspective. However, I will tell you, I've had some really great experience lately. I'm not much of a cook. Okay, so I'm totally going to admit that. But I have 4 kids. We spend so much money eating out that I bought an Instapot for Christmas, or actually I got one. And I'm like, I need recipes because I'm just not creative on my own. And so I'm not very good at planning in advance. So usually what'll happen is I'll be at the grocery store and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I need something to cook tonight. What am I going to do? I'll do a search in Google. And I'll basically usually, because we have beautiful schemas, we have these really nice posts that pop up for chicken Instapot recipe with beautiful pictures. And I'll usually click on it if I think it looks nice. But I need to make decisions fast. And usually the first thing is I'll scroll through. I need to know what I need to buy. Like literally, what is my ingredients? Because I'm at the store and I need to know fast. And a lot of times, honestly, in my grocery store, I have really bad data connection too. So I'm already like slow. So I need to be able to get there fast to those ingredients. Later, when I'm at home and I am cooking, then I have a little bit more time to kind of go through. But I'll tell you, if I can't get to those ingredients, to the meat of exactly what I need to know, I'm going to hit the back button and I'm going to go to someone else's website. And if it happens to me enough, like I start to remember, I won't go to that website at all because I find it super annoying from a usability standpoint. So I feel like it's super crucial. And honestly, usability is so important for us as users if we're building our website, we need to take into consideration the experience that people are having on our website. If they are having poor experience, then they're just not going to come back. So yes, when we add these jump to link, you might see a decline in your ad revenue. However, I feel like in the long run, it's going to work to your benefit. That is going to go up as you build that brand experience with people. They recognize that they have a great experience on your website and they come back to you. And that's what it's all about. And then ultimately, if that happens, you are going to make more money in the long run. So for me, that's kind of my experience, coming both from trying not to objectively stand outside of that. With that said, I know you guys work really hard. You need to make money off your website. So I totally understand that as well. So I definitely say test it and don't panic if you get that drop right away. It really, honestly, Casey, is there a way for us to maybe test it on some posts and not on all of them so that people, would you recommend that or no?
You know what, you can. I always tell people to try to install something like Hot Frog. Do I have that right? Is it Hot Frog? Let me see. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Hot Frog, yeah, or Hot Jar. Hot jar. My bad. So Hotjar. For those of you on the call who have any inkling of, maybe you're hesitant about it, download and install Hotjar. It's going to blow your mind because Hotjar is going to be able to show you how users are navigating your content before you add buttons, and then you can navigate the content after you add the buttons. And Hotjar will record about 2,000 sessions a month or a day. It's free, very easy to use, and it allows you to very quickly see the impact of these buttons. And I can tell you, when we talk about satisfying user intent, which should be always the salty marshmallow, I like to brag, but she went from 20,000 sessions to 5 million sessions in 3 years. She never stopped using the jump to recipe button. So again, you have to think of your users. The more you can optimize for users, the more traffic you're going to generate, the easier it is for you to, again, show and keep users on your site. So if they're gonna, they're gonna come back, they're gonna remember. I used this site. It was very easy for me to navigate. I'm definitely gonna make a note of it and come back in the future for more recipes or the like. So, again, test it on yourself, but I'm always gonna err on the side of users always. And it's funny. I mean, you can find, we've pasted an article in here. Go in and look at the links. Go in and read the comments, and especially the thread on Twitter. Hilarious thread on Twitter about how users really want the button. I mean, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people who went in and said, just give me the button for God's sakes. It's a lot of people that I wouldn't want to piss off on my blog.
Very, very good point. Thank you, Casey. So we have so many great questions. I feel like a good one here is, how many categories should a website have? Should they be broad or detailed? For my recipe sites, I have categories for each recipe. Do we want to have different ones based off of like what types of cooking utensils they use, such as an air fryer or crock pot, or is it desserts? How do you decide?
So I'm sorry, what was just paste over the question again. You pasted over the question in.
Absolutely. Deciding on categories, essentially, especially a lot of our questions are food blog related.
Right.
Essentially, how do we decide? It is hard to know. And we talked a little bit about categories and tags, and I guess maybe I should also mention sometimes the technical side of it. I always recommend that we no index are tags, because people tend to go tag happy. They're there for usability purposes. You want to try to prevent that duplicate content that can happen. I've also seen with categories, for instance, if you find that you're putting a post in multiple categories and it's always like the same posts that are always going in multiple categories, do you find, I feel like that might potentially be an issue with duplicate content as well.
So
do you guys see any issues?
So with regards to the tags and the categories, I look at it this way. Tags are great for on-site search. They're not a great way to hierarchical order a lot of content. I find that the categories, again, work better on that. And like Arsen already said, there's always a duplicate content issue that'll arise if you tend to have a ton of tags and then categories as well. Now, I find that the category pages can absolutely send very noticeable levels of traffic. And to do that, though, you have to optimize the category pages. So like I have seen some blogs who are very finite in their categories, 12 categories. I have other blogs that have 50 or 60 categories. The secret behind categories is understanding that you need to fill them out with content. It makes no sense to have 50 categories if you only have 2 or 3 posts in each category. It'd be better for you to have less categories and more content in those categories than it would be to go to the other spectrum. And then, of course, again, if you're on Genesis or some of these other themes, you have the ability to add an on-page H1, add a couple paragraphs of above the fold content. You can even cross-link the categories to some of the other, some top recipes. And then, we can always link to the category pages within our content. I do think it looks weird when you link to a tag page because tag pages are just not as qualified for users. So I tend to say, if you're going to link to pages on your site, use the category pages when at all possible.
We've had audits where we've had more category pages than actual posts on the website. We've had 800 to 900 categories on the blog that had 300 posts. And when you do a crawl of that, it looks really weird because a big chunk of your site is paginated because of that. So there's a myriad of issues that kind of work out as a byproduct of mishandling your categories and not setting them up properly. Again, I'm going to go back to the concept of topics, right? Let's say you're writing about dessert. Dessert is a topic. And then in dessert, you might have cookies and cake and ice cream, right? Those can be subcategories. So you can organize content across category and subcategory to further help refine or match the query to what's on your site, right? So again, going back to if I'm searching for dessert recipes, ask yourself, which page on my site is the best place for a user to come into if I'm ranking for dessert recipes? Is it going to be your cookie recipe? Because you don't know if the person has cookies in mind or they're thinking about dessert, right? So those categories act as quote unquote landing pages or topical, let's say, home pages for that main topic. So again, if you're trying to rank for something that's very short tail, like dessert recipes, it's going to be your dessert page that needs to be the category page that's going to need to rank so that it matches that query intent, right? But if somebody refines it further, then Google understands that, hey, look at all these assets. And then this also goes to help Google understand like expertise, authority, and trust here. Also, it's a big part of that because you're essentially showing Google that look at all this content, look at all these assets that I have on this particular topic, right? Thus, I'm authority on this topic. So if you have it properly organized and your categories are signaling the proper topical organization and focus, as people navigate through your site, they're exposed to other assets within that category. So it creates better organization. It's easier for Google to understand what page is about what, how are these pages related, and this helps you with rankings.
So and on this topic as well, there's a question in here. What about recipes that fall into 3 or 4 categories? Totally fine. Here's the secret though. You need to be choosing a featured category for every recipe. So as you go into your recipes, you should go on your right-hand side, especially if you're on a Genesis framework or most blogs do this. There's an option to choose a featured category. That should be the featured category, the main category for that recipe. Now, the reason this is important is also for the generation of breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are, to me, mandatory. If you're on the call and you don't have breadcrumbs on your site, to me, I believe that is a substantial disservice to your users. It's a user-first optimization. Breadcrumbs also allow you to generate an increased rich snippet in Google. So by choosing your featured category, that's the category that's going to be populated in your breadcrumbs on the pages. So be aware of that. Now you can go into Genesis and one-click turn breadcrumbs on, or you can go and use something like Yoast. Yoast has built-in breadcrumbs. You just have to make sure you scroll down and choose category, or your breadcrumbs are going to look really strange with just home, the recipe. There's no middle step in there. There's nothing attractive about that. So make sure that you look at that. And if you want to code breadcrumbs into your theme, you can do it with Yoast, or you can use a theme that has them built in, which is a definite SEO advantage.
Yep. And then always make sure that the breadcrumbs have markup and they're properly positioned within the head of the page.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
Having the proper schema with those breadcrumbs can allow you to generate those pretty breadcrumbs in Google SERPs. So those are so useful when those appear. So absolutely. Good question here. So we talked a little bit about republishing, and this kind of goes back to it, but I really like the question was, as you're republishing, if you have a great performing recipe, but you wanted to update the photos, should you leave it alone, or will changing out photos, could that potentially cause issues with the rankings of that post?
Well, anytime you update a post, you're going to run the risk of upsetting the apple cart. You're going to run the risk of anytime you change anything, you have the chance that it's going to rise, and you have the chance that it's going to drop. I basically tell people, especially in my audits, updating and republishing content is the secret to long-term success. If you've got 70% of your content and it's just not generating much traffic, after we've audited it and decided, okay, I'm going to keep this, then we work on a checklist and say, okay, here's what we need to do to make that content better. And then we're going to schedule it out. Now, if you're already in the top 3 for a post, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't touch it. There's just no real long-term benefit for that unless you previously were at the position 0 and you lost your position 0 or your featured snippet. Maybe you have a post that's generating you 5, 10, 20,000 sessions or clicks a month in Google Search Console. It's one of your big recipes. I would hate for that to fall too much, because you're going to notice that drop considerably. And I've had audits where I've audited sites where 60% of their traffic is 2 or 3 recipes. That's not a good situation to be in. So what we want to try to do is get more of their content to take up the slack from these larger posts and try to insulate those from large ranking changes. We can take a look. If, for example, I tell people, if I can improve the recipe card, for example, if I can fully enhance the recipe card, I might have them do that. If I know that the photos didn't have alt tags, I might go in and add some alt tags correctly. I might make small changes and then I'll wait. Now, many of you have heard the term Google Dance. It is absolutely a real thing. Google even has an algorithm, a patent for it, where they basically will penalize you when you make changes. So if you do something on a page and you make a lot of changes and all of a sudden the post drops like a rock, Google's trying to scare you into reversing the changes that you made, so you don't have enough time to understand if you did anything correctly. So as I tell people, and I know Arsen and Shelly have seen this as well, we just got to be patient. You're going to wait a couple weeks. Usually that times out the filter and you'll start to see the post slowly climb back up. But that's just something to be aware of. You'll know that based upon experience as you've worked through this.
And you can also kind of, sorry, Shelly, you can also like send external signals to the post once you've made the changes to help it start bumping up a little bit more. And external signals could be backlinks to the post.
So I actually saw a comment, and it was a while back, but it was talking about doing link parties and things like that. I know outside of the blogging industry, there's a lot of issues with, where we get our links from and how we go about doing it. But obviously, it's kind of a whole another world when we're talking about the close-knit blogging community. So have you seen issues with things like link parties, Casey? And should we be participating? How should we be doing it? Anything we should acknowledge we should be paying attention to when we do that?
I would say that link parties are a very, what's the word? I would say dangerous. I would say link parties are a dangerous link building tool because you're creating a footprint which shows you connecting to a small group of bloggers where you just keep repeating and linking to everyone over and over again. Many of you on the call might be familiar with a plugin called InLinks, INLINZ. That was a very popular plugin that is used for a lot of these link up things. And that plugin is easy to find. That plugin is easy to see algorithmically. So it makes sense that Google is probably going to see this large footprint, these artificial links, you linking to me, I'll link to you, which is a violation of Google link scheme guidelines, and probably disavow the links, probably just ignore the links completely. I would just say that they're going to be of limited value to you. Now, things like roundups, things like pull marketing resources, Sarah with Champagne Tastes, champagne-taste.com. Fantastic blogger. She has a really good job with link bait creation. She has a great post on how to drink bourbon. Fantastic. It has everything you'd ever want to know about bourbon on it. And it contains, it's mixed in with various recipes from other people that she's featured. That is the kind of content that Google wants to see. That's the kind of content that's going to reward you long-term with links and incoming traffic. That's what I want you to concentrate on, not link parties.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, Google's said that they're pretty good at filtering out crap when it comes to backlinks. And a lot of those efforts that you guys are putting into these link parties most likely don't move the needle for you much because Google is able to understand what's happening and not pass any value to you through that. So I wouldn't necessarily even worry about doing it. I think it's a wasted effort. It's not going to move the needle for you guys.
I totally agree. It's dangerous too. Honestly, I'm surprised there haven't been more issues and penalties. We've seen it in other industries. Big part of even legal industry, they used to have all these sidebar links. And if you join this network and built your website on their network, you would get your great link on other people's sites. They ended up getting penalized. So it's risky for sure.
So someone just submitted a quick question on disavow links, and I know we've talked about that specifically. Did you drop out?
Nope.
No,
okay, good. I can hear you. All right, fantastic. So let's talk a little bit. If there's a nice question here about disavow links, folks, the average person on this call is never going to need a disavow file. It's just not going to happen. If you go and you look, and we're going to paste over the page here, I'll have to find it. If you go and read the disavow link page from Google, they very specifically say, most likely you are never going to need a disavow file. We already do a great job disavowing links. The only time you'd ever need to use a disavow file is if you know you're guilty of building in some very, very bad links yourself, or you have a manual action penalty, an unnatural links to your site or from your site type of penalty. The vast majority of you are just never going to need a disavow file. That I've been seeing that a lot lately. I've had people contact me noticing that they're a food blogger with less than 500 linking domains and they're submitting a disavow file. Disavow files are also extremely easy to screw up. You never know which links Google are counting. I'm sorry, even Google doesn't know. They've said that publicly. So don't use a tool to tell you, hey, we found a couple toxic links. Maybe you should get a disavow file. The vast majority of people are just never going to need that. And it's certainly not going to move the needle for anything that you think it's going to do. So if you're on the call here and you're asking questions about what do we need to disavow, probably the wrong question. So I would just not worry about it. I'd put it on the back burner. And if we have an audit together, we discuss this in detail. But it's just
The
not
rule
worth
of
the time. Go ahead,
the
Arsen.
rule of thumb is, unless you've personally been building links to your site,
Yeah.
or you've paid someone to build links to your site, or you were a part of any of these link parades or whatever they are, there is a potential that you might need a quick look at your links, a review for toxicity. Again, Google is really good at cleaning up the junk. As a part of like what we do when we work, when we do an audit, we include it into every audit. We want to review all of your links and make sure that there's nothing weird happening there. But if you've been just blogging and doing everything, and the links are coming in organically and naturally, you really don't need to worry about that. You really don't. Yeah. So there's and a little bit off topic, but on topic. So tools, right? So you have tools like even like SEMrush that do a link scan, and they come back and say, oh, we've noticed toxicity, right? A tool is a tool, and SEMrush, and there's some other really, really good tools just like SEMrush who somewhat say that they are able to understand if a link has potential toxicity or there's a spam score or whatever have you. Keep in mind, it's still just a tool. You need a human brain to review what the tool says. A good example that I give of this is with any crawler. You do a crawl of your site, and it comes back and says, oh, you have duplicate titles or you don't have duplicate titles. But it's a machine. It's looking for, is there an exact match between two titles? So if you have a title that says, XYZ, and then another title for another post that says XYZ1, a tool will show that as not duplicates, but they are very near duplicates. And from an algorithmic perspective, they will create confusion. So same applies to any tool that tells you, oh, you have toxic links. You should go and take it, analyze it, hire an expert, talk to someone before you go in, because with a disavow file, you can actually cause more harm than good.
I agree. Casey, actually, he mentioned a couple of plugins. Can you rename those for everyone? We had a few that missed them. I think it was, oh, Casey is putting them in the chat. So the one was WP Asset Cleanup and the quick links as well. So the links are there in the chat. Open those up and check them out. I want to try to get to a couple more questions. I know we're running a little over here, but I know one thing that we've seen, we had a question about pulling in Instagram pictures, feeds actually, into the footers of the site. They look so pretty. We have pretty Instagram feeds. We want to display it on our website. And of course, someone here had seen where Casey specifically had mentioned online not to do it. And so I would love to hear you explain your thinking behind that.
Right. So just to let you guys know that that is a site-specific recommendation. In the case of the site that we were talking about, she had an excessive DOM node issue. DOMs are document object model, and a node is basically it's simply an HTML element, and nodes make up the regular pages on a site. Google would like the DOM node size of a page to be less than 1,500 nodes. So if you're on the call and you're using the new Google PageSpeed Insights tool, there's a big red warning now that says, hey, warning, your DOM node size is excessive. So in this blogger's case, the Instagram widget was generating an extra 300 or 400 nodes that had no benefit for her. Users were not clicking on that, which is why you'd want to use something like Hotjar so that you can use heat mapping to see what is being clicked on your pages and what is not. Now, most of you on the site maybe are running ads, maybe not running ads. You should be aware that one of the biggest issues we're seeing right now is the disappearing of rich snippets in search. This is happening because of excessive DOM node generation because of sites on WordPress that are running ads, running a lot of built-in widgets, running a lot of excessive elements on the page, not paginating their comments, okay? If you've got a page that's generating 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 nodes, it could easily cause you issues because if Google can't crawl the page they can't parse and render the page. And when they can't render a page, you lose rich snippets. So be aware of this, okay? Go into the new Google PageSpeed Insights, scroll down and take a look at pages. You know, I've got an example here today with a very big blogger. And with ads, they were generating 3,300 nodes on the page. Without ads, they generated 1,600 nodes on the page. It's insane. So we're not going to call these ad companies out. They know who they are. They need to work on this. They need to work at making sure that they're serving their ads in a way that's, you know, most effective, that minimizes these generation of these nodes. Also, again, go back in through the chat that we've done today. Look at using the best plugins. Short Pixel or a Magnify for image optimization. WP Rocket for caching. Use Cloudflare for your CDN because it works great with WP Rocket. Use some of the quick link optimization plugins that we've shared. Paginate your comments. Now, this is a funny one because if you go into Yoast and you paginate your comments, I'm sorry, if you go into WordPress and you paginate your comments, Yoast will give you a warning. This is why you need to not worry too much about plugins because Yoast is just idiotic in this aspect. One of the fastest and easiest ways for you to make a page faster is to only show a certain amount of comments on the page. We call that pagination. So you can go in and choose maybe 20 comments and 20 follow-ups or whatever to show on the page. Well, Yoast doesn't like that because it creates these extra comment 1, comment 2 pages. Google's great at ignoring those. You'll be fine. And the bottom line benefit is you'll be faster. And when you're faster, you are going to generate more traffic because you're going to be able to have more users interact with your content every minute. That's the secret. That's why I can do an audit, dramatically increase page speed, do nothing else, and traffic is like goes through the roof. It's like taking a parking brake off. So I know that Arsen and Shelly can respond to this as well. So please, I don't want to hog the conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, it was such a huge difference. User experience is just, you don't want it being slow for that experience, but it also helps you from a ranking perspective. And we definitely see, you know, you want to generate ad revenue from your website. But unfortunately, sometimes you don't want to inject ads in every possible space that you can. It's not a good user experience. It's going to slow down your pages. You really need to find the right formula, essentially, to having the right balance of ads. And I don't know if there's like a specific number. It might differ for everyone. So you might really want to test this. You know, what affects your speed, what affects your rankings, and what's affecting your revenue, and really try to find a good balance.
So there's to follow up on what Casey was saying about the comments. We've had situations where the total amount of comments on the page was outweighing the actual content that's on the page, the recipe or the blog post. And over time, as as that post became more popular and more comments were being added, they started diluting the overall focus for that page. So the bloggers started seeing a decrease in rankings. So that comment pagination, especially if you're a very popular blog that gets a lot of traction, a lot of engagement on your post levels, post level engagement, doing that pagination is super important. Now, you also want to make sure that pagination is properly set up without any confusing canonical signals within the rel next prev or the canonical itself, because then Google, I've seen this, even though Google is good at throwing those pages out of search, if the canonical signals are confusing, those pages will be indexed and will get picked up into search. So be very careful when you're doing that. Again, read all the documentation on if your theme offers it. If not, using a third party to help you with that. But definitely want to make sure that all of those kind of check boxes are checked.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Guys, we're like running on 80 minutes, which is amazing. And we still have a whole bunch. We're getting lots of questions. I know we probably should wrap it up soon, but maybe we'll touch on one or two more. One of the things actually that I wanted to bring up, because I get a lot of Casey's referrals after he's audited, and a lot of issues we're seeing is the themes that they're using, or whether they be custom or something that they bought, the layout is causing issues. Maybe how they have their homepage set up. And a big part is that we need to address, mobile is so relevant. And I don't know about you, Casey, but the analytics and data that I'm seeing for most, especially food blogs, I'm seeing 80 to 90% mobile traffic.
Yeah.
And it's insane. And so, Google's been pushing that we're in a mobile first world. So that is absolutely 100% true. And so from a design standpoint, we're seeing all these, and I'm a girl, I love like pretty things. And so I think I do experience and understand having that aesthetically beautiful site. But I'm also seeing that on mobile, you're not going to see all that pretty stuff.
Right.
It's, investing, because I'm seeing like the budgets that are put into these highly customized sites. It's so expensive. And now we're stripping it all away. And so Casey, you have so much, I see so much great advice that you're giving to some of these bloggers as far as like layouts. And what are some of the things that you feel are super important? And Arsen, you elaborate on this as well. But what should we be looking for when we're choosing a theme for our site or a design?
Well, thanks, Shelly. So one of the biggest issues that I see is a desire for people to, again, I totally understand designing for mobile first, but if you take that mobile first design and you look it on a desktop, oh my God, it is so ugly. You're always going to have a percentage of people who are going to choose to navigate on desktop and tablet. One of the things that I see a lot recently, and it's just terrible advice, is people eliminating elements on sidebars. Now, the thing about the sidebar is this: it's one of the fastest and easiest ways for you to generate internal linking. Internal linking is an extremely underutilized way to drive authority to your top content. So many of you I've heard this all the time. Casey, I had a redesign. My traffic dropped 20%. My traffic dropped 40%. What happened? The designer took the sidebar away. They took the sidebar away. They eliminated internal links. They eliminated user-first optimizations, all because they were trying to optimize for mobile as much as possible. Well, if you're using a responsive design, don't lose any sleep over it. Those items on the sidebar, as Shelly will tell you, will just be pushed to the bottom of the page. They're not going to be a huge issue for you. But I tell you what will be a huge issue is when you listen to an ad company or someone saying, I want to get you to teal or to some kind of certain color, and removing elements on your sidebar that you've been using successfully or correctly for months or years. I can tell you that the reason that you hear these crazy stories about, like I mentioned, the salty marshmallow and others, the reason these bloggers are doing so incredibly well isn't because I'm any good at what I do, and I'd like to think I am a little bit. It's because we're undoing bad advice from other people. A sidebar is very important. You should be using that sidebar to reflect a nice above the fold photo of you whenever possible, because that reinforces EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. You should also be using it to show your demonstrated expertise. If you have good creator expertise, maybe you've been featured on big sites like Reader's Digest or the Cooking Channel or BuzzFeed or any of these other very common links. Good Housekeeping, Country Living is another one. Very popular sites for food bloggers. We want to show that demonstrated expertise right smack on your site. So I tend to have that on your sidebar as a small graphic, and I tend to have that as a footer as well. And if you've got a competent webmaster, they can code those in and make sure that they're covered by lazy loading. And so you're not going to have any impact with regards to bottom line page speed hits. So when I'm looking on a site, one of the first things I'm looking at is when I'm auditing the site on desktop, can I see a nice section of their trending recipes? Maybe 5 or 6 of their top recipes, most popular recipes. Because by putting there, I'm reinforcing through internal site-wide linking my top content. If you did nothing but that, many times you're going to get traffic increases because you've provided a strong signal to Google. This is my best content. I'm linking to it from every page. It's super easy for users to find. And of course, they're also going to be easier for them to click, which is why you want to use something like Hotjar again so that you can track how users are navigating your site before you optimize your sidebar and how users are navigating your site after you optimize your sidebar. It's mind-blowing. So something to think about. Yeah.
Absolutely. Super, super crucial. Casey, another thing I was seeing, and we keep going back, but I feel like it's so important to cover, is your homepage. So we're getting people that are asking, does the sidebar need to be on the homepage? And then also, as far as like when you're talking about your snippets that are on the homepage, some people for design standpoint might remove the snippets. How much words need to be there? Can we just put the pretty pictures with the titles that can be clicked on? And what should we be looking for as far as that goes?
Well, you know what? That's a good question. And I'll tell you, if you go into Google Search Console and you look at your top pages report, most of you on this call will find that your homepage doesn't generate a ton of traffic, even though it's the strongest page on your domain. I always look at that as a red flag. It's usually because you haven't included enough indexable content on the homepage itself for Google to fully algorithmically score the content, which is why, again, I don't like to see a whole homepage with nothing but thumbnails or ads, thumbnails and ads. I'd like to see maybe a nice little sidebar, maybe your featured post with a nice summary, a little bit of a summary. It doesn't have to be 4 or 5 pages long. It doesn't have to have a 6 or 7 page scroll on mobile, but it should feature your top content. It should show your most recent content. And yeah, I think an optimized sidebar on your homepage is just smart. And one of the things that a lot of people forget to do is to optimize their homepage. You can actually go into Yoast and set a custom page title and description for your homepage. 75% of the audits I do, they have not done this. Just by setting a custom page title and a description, we will make the page more attractive to Google and users. So be aware of that. Super easy to do.
I can't tell you how many times I still see home as a title tag on the homepage, which is such a waste. So for sure. You guys, we've had so many amazing questions, and I know we didn't even come close to getting to hardly a small fraction of those, but there's so many left. So we want to give you guys a chance to reach out to us. Can you guys tell everyone where you can be reached at in case you have questions that were not addressed?
Sure, I'm putting it in the chat on YouTube. My Twitter handle is at @TopHatArsen. And then if you want to email me directly, you can just email webinars@TopHatRank, and I'll add that in as well.
Absolutely. Great idea. You guys.
Sorry.
I will tell you, this has been so great. Sorry, go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, and I've done the same thing. So if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, that's MediaWise, MEDIAWY is in yellow, SE, MediaWise. Or you can drop me a note at casey@mediawise.com. This will be available as a replay. This will be probably up very quickly. I know Shelly has more information than I do. Take a minute today and look through the long list of questions. Look at the resources we've recommended. Do that. Try to do a search for Arsen's name, Shelly's name, my name in Google. Look at the interviews and information that we've shared for free online. There's a lot of it. I'm always surprised at the incorrect information that we all see in our audits. And it's just because you don't know what you don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. As I tell everyone all the time, when people schedule an audit, I tell them it's the best investment they'll ever make. And I'm very, very clear about that, because it'll provide them, here's what you're doing right, here's what you're doing wrong, here's what we can improve upon to get you ranking more competitively. And I know Arsen and Shelly say the same thing, because it's true.
Absolutely. There's so much bad information out there. It's really scary. And I know it's hard to know who to trust. And I can't really give you much advice on that, because there's, it's a very challenging industry, and it's just hard. But there's definitely some people, if you find that you have questions, I have a vast experience, so I can usually speak to most things. But if I cannot, I have this awesome network, and so do these guys, that we know who to ask to get you the answer. So I'm not afraid to say I don't know that. And honestly, you know, it's such a vast, rapidly changing field that it's hard for any one person to stay on top of everything. So truthfully, it's having places to go to be able to ask questions. And I totally appreciate these guys. And honestly, check out our webinar page for SEMrush. We have so many webinars. Even though you're in the blogging industry, SEO in general, a lot of the same rules apply. So there's so many great webinars. There's so many great blog posts. Again, follow me. I cannot wait to release some of my articles that are specific to using SEMrush for blogging. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But you guys want to say goodbye?
One thing I'm going to say is, and I think we can all agree on this, and there's a lot of disinformation out there about this. WordPress is not SEO ready out of the box.
No,
absolutely not. And anybody who's saying that is doing a disadvantage to you.
Yeah, again, there are a lot of again, podcasts, even people associated with ad companies who will tell you you don't need an audit, or WordPress is okay out of the box. Hey, you know what? I think we've shown today that's not the case. There are plenty of things that you can do with your WordPress site that you are not doing that might be new to you. So just be aware that, like I said, you don't know what you don't know. And hopefully this helps kind of get some of the cloud out of the way there. And your success is our success. We really want you to be as successful as possible. So thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.